All righty, boys and girls, welcome back to another episode of the Red, White, Claret, and Blue Show. We are your illustrious, if a bit tardy, hosts. I am Alex Baquero, and this is Christopher Bang It Out Condit, your American villain voices, as always, serving up the lukewarmest of lukewarm opinions. Please go like, follow, rate, review, subscribe, all the places below our faces. I'm gonna stick with that one for a little while. I really liked stumbling on that one a little while ago.
Yeah.
We are late this week. To be determined if any of you actually listen to this before the Wolves match tomorrow at 3 p.m. But life continues to life for the two of us. And as we always say, until you all start paying us, or you get all your friends to listen to us so that the ad companies can start paying us, unfortunately, we have other priorities that will take precedent over this. But we persist, and we will continue to get you content, just maybe not as always on the schedule that we wanted to. Chris, other than needing to punch this back a week because you really are a man in demand, both personally and professionally, it sounds like. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. It's been a long week, and I think we're going to have a few more of those from my professional standpoint. Shout out to the CEO of my company who often listens to this podcast, so hopefully he's listening to this one. But I'm doing well. Things are good, and everybody is happy, healthy, and can't complain. We had some visitors from my wife's side of the family this week and last week, so it's been good to see people coming to get away from the snow and cold in the Northeast. How are you, Alex?
Speaking of getting away from the snow and cold in the Northeast, my parents are coming down this weekend to come meet Nico for the first time.
Yeah.
And yeah, I learn each and every day how, I'm going to choose my words carefully since this is a public forum, how interesting and novel raising a child is. It seems like every time you think you've got like a little bit of momentum, a schedule figured out, something like that, you're going to get a wrench thrown in your plans. And you know, I've spoken to you about this off the pod, I think, but I will say on the pod as well. There's so much that I cognitively knew going into this. Like, I knew before we had a kid that everything was going to be crazy for 18 years.
You think that's
it? It's one thing to know it, and then there's another thing to experience it. And it doesn't matter how many times someone tells you it, how often you've seen it secondhand, how many books you read that describe to you exactly what it's going to be like. Going through it yourself, there is no way to prepare, and so we're in that every single day, right?
Yeah, what are you, like 10 days in at this point?
11, Chris.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Basically done.
Yeah.
There's a joke I've been making recently that I am not going to say on a public forum. I'll text it to you after this.
All right. That sounds good. I mean, I tell everybody whenever they ask what the kids are up to, I just tell them, hey, man, I put them in front of the TV with a bowl of popcorn and the dogs are watching. They're adults, for Christ's sake. They'll be fine.
I'll be there soon enough. I caught him kind of enamored with the television while we were watching it earlier, and I needed to like turn him away. I was like, no, you're too young. You're not going to start staring at the screen yet. Staring at the screen, Chris, we might be staring kind of in between our fingers here in fear while Villa plays Wolves tomorrow at 3 p.m. Let's dive right into this. So we are at the Molineux. Last time we met, we won 1-0 on a Boubacar Kamara goal. Rest in peace, Boubacar Kamara.
Oh, jeez.
Villa dominated most statistical measures, but obviously could not find the breakthrough. This fixture, I think, is always very frustrating for Villa, no matter how good we are and how bad Wolves are, particularly when we play at Wolverhampton. And I think that every Villa fan kind of knows this. this season, we know that they're one of the worst teams ever in the history of the Premier League. If you're gonna find any reason, I think there's a lot of apprehension out there in the Villaverse, and probably a main point for this is obviously the Arsenal draw that they were able to get, and the fact that they only have one loss in their last four. It was 1-0 to Palace. They got a 61st minute red. Shout out Evan Gasson for scoring a goal in that one. And so I guess maybe you say that they're in a bit of an upswing. They have yet to win. They just don't. They don't do well against anybody. So like we'll go through how they play, all the statistical metrics later on. The fight and Rob Edwards are not good.
They're bad.
The only thing that's really going in their favor is the fact that, again, only one loss in their last four. Villa are in atrocious form. And then there's been some new statistics kind of doing the rounds lately of Villa have yet to win in like their last 6, I think, away night matches. Just not a time that Villa perform all too well. Like we said, at Molineux, where we typically don't do well in the past. And I don't know. Chris, I guess I'll ask you right now, are the nerves warranted?
A little, I think. I mean, due to the fact that the form has been so bad, all the statistics you just mentioned, as well as the fact that the referee is going to be the worst statistical referee in terms of Villa's results, not in terms of how he calls the game. In terms of results for Villa, Craig Pawson has an abysmal record for when Aston Villa have an abysmal record when Craig Pawson is the referee. So you have all these things sort of stacked up against you. The only positive, or the only thing that gives me a glimmer of hope, which is one of the things we talked about in the last pod, is that Wolves are terrible. And like, yes, they're in an upswing because there's no other place they certainly couldn't be in a downswing, so it's either maintaining form, which is terrible, or slightly better. And I'll give them credit for the draw against Arsenal. That was great and fun to watch the total meltdown that happened. And who knows what would have happened in the Palace game had they not gotten that red and had to play 10 men for 30 minutes. But those things happen. And I actually think not necessarily red cards, but I think that if you look statistically, there is a chance that there is going to be a lot of pressure on Wolves from a discipline standpoint, which isn't something we often talk about on the podcast here. But 2 reasons. Aston Villa are fouled often anyway. They're going to likely dominate possession, and Wolves commit a lot of fouls. So those three issues together could potentially lead to a high number of yellow cards and put Wolves under some pressure from that standpoint. I don't know if it'll happen, but it is going to be an interesting watch for me.
Yeah, what's interesting for me is, and you get this with teams that are down there and can't quite figure it out, right? The manager chops and changes a lot. You're trying different formations, you're trying different players. And so, another thing perhaps going for Wolves is the fact that they're very hard to game plan for. They're very hard to scout. What we do know is that it's usually some kind of 3 at the back situation, but whether it's 1 striker, 2 strikers, Rob Edwards has used a bit of both. How the midfield is configured has certainly changed. They're obviously going to drop into more of a back 5 than really a back 3 for a large portion of this. And we just know that they attack a lot down the left, particularly through their wing back of Hugo Bueno. They try and push him and their right wing back up super high. And then despite the different managers, I think this Wolves team has very much an identity of defend deep, counter quick. You mentioned they're going to concede a lot of the ball. Even at home, I think they're averaging something like 42% possession. That's atrocious.
Yep.
And they're only putting up something like 9 shots a game. So I do not expect a match in which Villa are going to be under pressure at all. But Villa have been in a lot of games where they've dominated the ball, particularly recently, where they haven't been able to do much with it, and then ultimately got hit by a sucker punch. Brentford most recently comes to mind immediately when they went down to 10 men.
Yep.
So like you said, Chris, it's going to be an interesting one to watch. I think all of that says, though, that it could shape up to be a very, very frustrating evening for Aston Villa because, as we've said, they don't necessarily have the players or the tactical acumen right now to break down a team that is just going to sit deep and invite on the pressure.
And that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's what you're right. That's how Wolves are going to play. Their best scorer, which is 2 goals, is out injured. They don't score a lot. They have 17 goals on the season, 18 if you count the own goal that scored against Arsenal. So, but 17 balls that they've actually put in the back of the net. So we talk about Villa not being able to score. This is horrifically bad scoring record. 17 goals in 28 games. Is that where we're at right now?
Something like that.
Yeah.
And atrocious finishers, by the way. Yeah. I wish I had written down the exact number, but they're underperforming their XG by 8, 10, 11, something of that sort. So they're not famous last words, right? But I really don't expect them to pose much of a threat. 10.
Yeah, it's 10. Yeah.
Underperforming by 10.
Yep.
They're not a team that I expect to pose much of a threat to Aston Villa, but it is almost their lack of a threat and their lack of desire to come out that I think is ultimately what could spell downfall for Aston Villa, because this is not a team. You and I have said this for a few weeks now. We've advocated for Villa to adopt a tactical approach similar to Arsenal. If the team is going to sit deep, stand on the ball, draw them out a little bit, and then ultimately use your pace to kind of play through the lines, get in behind them, all that kind of stuff. Wolves aren't going to come out. They'll let you just sit on the ball at the halfway point because any point is a good point for them at this point. And taking one off of Villa, they don't need to fight for wins at this point.
I mean, they taking a point off of anybody in the top 10 is fantastic, right? For them. And they need to scrap and claw for every point they can get. So yes, they will not come out. If you stand on the ball, they'll let you stand there for 45 minutes. And it'll be like a high school basketball game where there's no shot clock and somebody just stands just over the half court line. And nothing happens. So Villa are going to have to bring the attacking impetus here. And that's going to be the real challenge. And I think I don't know that there's a single cure for what is currently ailing Aston Villa, but I think there's, one big change that you can make, and that is to put Tammy Abraham up top to start and put Ollie Watkins on the bench. And one of the things that I think you sent me earlier this week was that, or did I send it to you? I don't remember. Watkins is one of the worst finishers in the league when it comes to.
I sent it to you. Yeah. He is 90th in goals per shots.
0.15 goals per shot.
Yeah.
I mean, that is abysmal. That really kind of put it into perspective to me, like just how much he's struggling. Because that is a rate that you would not expect to see from a striker of his quality. How's that for a nice way to put it?
I mean, bro, 90th. And there's only 20 teams in the league.
Yep.
There's on average 4 players per team that have a better goals per shot record than Ollie Watkins.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah, no. I mean, Matty Cash has got to be way up there, though, right? Like that's.
Oh, he's at 1. Every time he shoots, he scores. Only bangers.
Bangers. Yeah.
No, it is interesting. So from a Villa perspective, I actually do expect some significant changes in this one. Stuff clearly isn't working. The guys aren't coming back. I think McGinn is still a couple games away, and he revealed on a podcast recently that Yori is even further beyond him, and obviously Kamara is just not. So, what does Villa have at their disposal to mix this up? The first of which I think is bringing on Pau instead of Tyrone Mings. 100%. You're right. I think that Tammy Abraham has to start in place of Ollie Watkins. Do I think that Tammy Abraham is the salve to all Aston Villa's issues? I don't. he is still the striker that in the championship we always said needed like 5 opportunities to score 1. But right now he's at least playing with confidence and like we've said on the past few pods, getting himself in the right areas to score goals, even if they are scruffy ones.
Yep.
Ollie Watkins is not. So I think Tammy Abraham will be in there. The other two that I think will be interesting to see, Jadon Sancho for Leon Bailey. And I think that this could be one where Ross Barkley gets a start.
I was wondering that myself, but I know we're not really doing lineups. We are kind of doing lineups now.
We're kind of doing lineups now,
yeah.
but I'll say why. I think Emi Buendia has had a rough go of it the past handful of games, has come under a lot of criticism for the most recent performance against Leeds. He had a little bit of a temper tantrum as he left the field, went right down the tunnel. And so I do think that he could probably use a little bit of a break. He is always a guy that I think where Villa are at right now, and I love Emi Buendia. Obviously, I had the Super Bowl prediction for him at the beginning of the season. He's not a guy that I ever thought or expected would start week in, week out for us 90 minutes, be this unmovable name on the team sheet.
Right.
I think I said at the time, he will largely be an impact sub. He'll get some spot starts here and there, go 60, 65 minutes, but he will just have an impact because of the player that he is. I think it's time to try him off the bench a little bit,
yeah.
Use his energy to run at tired legs. Obviously, Ross Barkley having the fitness that he does or lack thereof at this point probably is only going 60, 65 if he's starting anyway. But team looked a little bit better when he came on against Leeds. He obviously brings a little bit different vision, range of passing, a little different kind of athleticism. And, Morgan Rogers was marked off the park against Leeds, right? They really put a blueprint out there for how to keep him out of the game, playing in the middle. And so I do wonder if he would also benefit from being pushed out wide where you can't necessarily double, triple team him as he tries to check to and get on the ball. So bringing Ross Barkley into the 10 there would also potentially free up Morgan Rogers to do a little bit more of what he does so effectively.
Yeah, that I agree. And that was a thought that I wondered about myself. The only question for me is fitness, because I've been a Barkley bro since like the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just came up with that in my head. I think he's I think it could be the right time to try that. You would like to have more depth at the midfield slots than you have, because Barkley could play the 10 or play a defensive mid role, but we just don't have that luxury at the moment. But I agree with you. There's going to be changes made from the previous starting 11, because there have to be. You can't roll that back out. But I think that if Villa can get themselves in a position where they can get an early goal in the first 15 to 20 minutes, that will put a lot of hearts and minds at ease, and also maybe help develop confidence among the players on the pitch, and hopefully lead to more. But if it starts going 30, 45, 60 minutes at where it's goalless, I think you're going to start seeing some desperation from Villa trying to get the ball into the net. And what I don't want to see, I think, is what we've seen a lot of over the last probably 3 to 5 games, which is big balls forward from the keeper, landing somewhere in the vicinity of Ollie Watkins or whoever the number 9 is, being passed to a midfielder who then promptly loses possession. Because that's been pretty much the bulk of Aston Villa's attacking possession or what feels like, I should say, the bulk of Villa's attacking possession for the last few games.
The big thing I don't want to see is all 11 players within the width of the 18-yard box, potentially the 6-yard box, passing it around about as quickly as my dead grandparents could run from side to side of the pitch. We need to play with more pace. We need to play with more urgency. We need to play with more creativity. And I am going to bang this drum every single pod more with get Cash high and wide, get Maatsen high and wide, and actually use them to create those triangles out in space, get to the byline, get crosses in. open up space for guys to dribble in and have some cracks at net, but you have to use the width. You have to play with a little more pace. So I guess my full lineup, Chris, and then we can kind of get our predictions on and get out of here. Emi Martinez in goal. I have Matty Cash, Ezri Konsa, Pau Torres, and Ian Matson. I think it'll still be Onana and Luiz in the midfield. In front of them, just to reiterate, I have Rogers, Barkley, Sancho, and then Tammy Abraham up top.
The only difference I had is
Unai is going to make this many changes, but I think it's the lineup that gives us the best opportunity to unlock a deep set defense.
Something, yeah. The only thing that I've got different was I still had Buendia out there to start and Barkley coming in off the bench, but I like the idea of Barkley starting and Buendia coming off the bench. I think we've seen Buendia as a super sub before, and I think we can see that again. His like you said earlier, his energy and ability to run at guys in the second half when they don't have their legs under them like they do in the first could be a potential, benefit for Villa. Same thing with Leon Bailey. Bring him on in a spot when you may need to go get a goal, go get another goal, hopefully, and send him after tired legs and see what he can do.
Yeah, I think those are good shouts by you. Just calling out that Allison and Andres Garcia are injured again.
Yep.
Garcia having a horror year.
Is he made of glass? I mean, mother of God.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with him.
It's a hamstring again, though, right?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. He's really struggling to recover from that one. Really don't love Allison's start to life. I once again will shout out Ryan from Bournemouth, who looked fantastic.
Yep.
I think we picked the wrong Brazilian, Chris. I think we did. Infiltrating the Villarati, anything that you want to say on the financial numbers that were released earlier today?
I think we'll do a longer pod about this another time, but the quick overhead view of it is Villa will continue to skirt the line as much as they possibly can out of necessity, because this is the only way to break this stranglehold that the Big Six have on the Premier League. The numbers are scary, a little concerning, particularly in terms of what they will be allowed to lose next year against the UEFA SCR regulation. But the sky is not falling. And I think from a non-Villa standpoint, the most interesting thing to me is Chelsea, because they're running out of assets to sell. And for UEFA, they can't even count those anyway. And your revenues are not keeping up with the amount of money you're losing. So I think you're going to see, because of the sheer size of their squad, is one of the reasons. But I think you're going to see some changes at Chelsea because they're going to have to do it out of necessity. Again, we'll do a big full pod on this one probably in the off season. But yeah, it's a good article. It's worth reading. I love the financial stuff. The sky is not falling, but there is cause for concern.
I think that's a very lukewarm assessment of the situation, Chris. Well done.
Sometimes I can be lukewarm.
Yeah, occasionally. Chris, before we get out, prediction for Wolves.
Yeah. I have 2-0 Aston Villa.
Bold.
Yeah. Matty Cash for the goal.
Ooh, okay. I could do with another Cash screamer.
That's right.
This is such a pivotal stretch for Aston Villa right now. Wolves needs to be 3 points, and then you have Chelsea and United back to back. And I'm not saying this is going to happen. I actually very much think it will not. But in theory, Claret and Blue podcast have talked about this as well. If Villa are to beat Wolves, Chelsea lose to Arsenal, and then Villa to beat Chelsea, all of a sudden that gap opens up to 12 points. And, there just aren't really enough games left for Chelsea to make that up for Aston Villa. Aston Villa could win something like 3 of 9 and still finish with more points than Chelsea to secure Champions League football. So, I'm almost actually glad that this game against Wolves is away from home for the reason that you mentioned earlier. If this stretches to 35, 40, 45, we're 0-0 at the break. All of a sudden, we're going into the second half and they're dropping deeper and deeper. I actually think that the Villa Park crowd, given recent results, could work against us in this one. So I do think that being away probably removes a little bit of that pressure. You can hopefully get a win there, and then you get the crowd behind you against Chelsea at home, where really you just need to not lose that one. Then you can take a draw, maintain that gap, and kind of go from there. Now, the other big issue with this theory, and I promise I'm not ducking giving my prediction on the score, is just that Arsenal has been so bad lately. Can you really count on Arsenal to beat Chelsea, even at home at the Emirates? I think you assume that would be the case. Obviously, Chelsea is not coming off a great result against Burnley, but Arsenal aren't necessarily blowing teams away anymore either, except for Spurs, the Get Right gang. So basically, there's a lot of permutations. There's a lot up in the air. And so all Villa can control over these next 3 games is win them. And if you win them, then things look a lot better towards the end of the season. If you lose them, then qualifying top 5, it looks really, really difficult over the remainder of the year. So given the nerviness, something in my gut says draw, but I'm gonna go against that and say it's gonna be another scruffy 1-0 Villa victory. I'm thinking like Brighton-esque scruffy 1-0 victory. You got to take points.
At this point, you take results, right?
Yeah.
So
you take 3 points.
I am hoping that it goes the way I think it could. Of an early goal from Villa will spur them on to a second, and I don't think that Wolves have the firepower to keep up.
I completely agree with you there. YouTube shout outs, Ed Cox 1618. Thanks for slide tackling into those comments, my friend. Glad you've been with us for quite a while. Chris, anything else that you want to add on this one?
Oh, our man Black Country Villain always on there too. I just don't, you can't shout him out every time, but I feel bad not shouting him out because he's the first one on every single pod. But
that's facts.
I only wanted to also shout out Villa Patty for pointing out on Twitter the exact same referee in the Arsenal game who was so confident that it was a clear and obvious foul against Spurs. To disallow a goal, did not give the same benefit to Aston Villa when they got full out shoved in the box against Brighton. Same referee. So PGMOL, you are welcome on this podcast to explain these decisions, because here's a man going on television talking about how he's comfortable with his decision making in one game, and you show you show an even more obvious
foul.
So
much worse.
An even more obvious foul in another game, and that foul is not given. I again would love to thank everyone for fouling Aston Villa so much that they're the most fouled team in the league by a lot, but stopping that fouling as soon as they get into the box. It's really nice of everybody.
I am still apoplectic as to how that was not called a penalty, not only on the field, but then upon VAR. The defender is nowhere near the ball. He's not making a play on the ball. He literally just 2-hand shoves Tammy Abraham down. Now, Villa scored on the ensuing corner, so ultimately it didn't impact the outcome of the game. But this Tottenham one, my God, Gabriel's
wasn't even a push
around like a fish. He doesn't extend his arms. His arms are just up. And he almost backs into him and then just flies down. And that would have made it 2-2, right? That's a completely different game.
That would have leveled it, yes.
If Kolo Muani scores that one. So insanity. I'm as apoplectic that was called a foul as Villa's was not.
Same referee. That again,
Yeah,
shout out Villa
doesn't
Patty for realizing
good
that.
good process, Chris.
Yeah.
Good process.
God. But anyway, that's all. I wanted to make sure we got to that because I thought that was one of the best pieces of Villa Twitter this week.
Yeah, put him on a stand, man. Make him answer the questions. All right, man. Well, fingers crossed for this one tomorrow that Villa can get back on a winning run, and we will be back sometime over the weekend, I would presume, in advance of next week to recap Wolves and obviously preview Villa's next match. So, Chris, until then, as always, up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Hi, Mom and Dad.